Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. We are in episode 3 of season 25. Good to be back with everyone. Camille, Ali, good to see you as always. And we have a fun show for you today. We're gonna go a little bit outside of Airtable. We're gonna talk about the softer platform, and which got its roots in the Airtable ecosystem. So Ali's gonna walk through us with that. But before we jump into that, there was some news that Airtable released. Let me show that up here. Camille, you were the one to find it. Walk us through what they announced.
Yeah, so we talked already, I believe it was either last episode or the first episode of the season, about the insert as JSON option when you're pulling items from a previous step in an automation. But what wasn't announced, or what we didn't know at the time, was if there was any kind of array that you're trying to pull into a field that only accepts a single value, like a text field, for example. Before this update, Airtable would say can't find anything to parse or something like that, where it wouldn't let you pull an array into a text field. But with this adjustment, and what they've announced here, is that if there is an array and you're trying to insert it into something like a text field, you now have the option of pulling the first item out of the array or the last item. And that's really helpful because a lot of the workarounds beforehand were foregoing using a lookup field in favor of a rollup field, so you can get a single item, or having a formula or something to that effect that forces something out of an array, and that just adds extra fields. You don't get the benefit of a lookup field. If you use a rollup field, there's pros and cons to using either of those field types. This adjustment kind of keeps your schema a little bit cleaner, and fewer workarounds. Grade A in my book. So this half of this is stuff that we've already kind of covered, and the other half is a very minor, like, it's a small update that I'm sure many people won't notice for quite a while, but it's these are the types of updates I love seeing from Airtable. Is just little improvements to the platform that resolve some uh, minor limitations.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, we'll have to do some testing on this in a couple weeks when we go through new features, because I've got some questions on how it handles different scenarios. But yeah, this is good.
This GIF is pretty useful in that it shows you exactly where it would appear. And then later on in this thread, I mentioned something I mentioned in that other episode we talked about for insert as JSON, that it would be great if you could pick which fields that you can bring over from the record object instead of getting just a single field as a JSON response. And, fingers crossed that they add that as an ability. But yeah, overall, both of these pretty welcome updates that mean that you have less rigmarole that you have to go through.
Yeah. So yeah, here's the question. It doesn't seem to work with update record because you don't usually.
I've used it in an update record step, and I haven't had a problem. It's possible that they made an update since this comment was written. I think this post is, at the time of recording, 4 days old. So it's possible that the problem has been resolved since then. But maybe I'm mistaken about what that commenter was saying it not being compatible with.
So here the response is, it's not currently possible to use these outside conditions comparisons. So you don't use it to update fields, you just use it in the conditional.
And what was I doing? I feel like I might have tested the wrong thing.
I feel like I've seen, maybe not the first and last, but I feel like I've seen the JSON representation in a lot of areas.
Definitely everywhere. So maybe I'm mistaken.
Or it looks like run script. Oh, you actually posted. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was part of my confusion. But here I'm talking more about the insert as JSON and not the array component first or last. But Yeah, so if that's the case, Airtable, make it consistent. They do sometimes have a habit of introducing a new feature and then applying it in like 3 out of 5 places you would want to apply it in the platform, and then the last 2 places seemingly
Never.
at random, just not being selected for inclusion. So
Like the filter conditions, why can't we have filter groups, condition groups inside of automation steps? Like,
it's the one place in Airtable you could add conditions everywhere, condition groups everywhere, except automations. So
Yeah.
automations seems to be the common denominator of missing implementation.
Yeah.
you also can't use date variables to do comparisons in find record steps.
Yeah, you have
You
a
have to, like,
pro
convert it
tip
to
for
a number.
those. Yeah, I was about to say, if you've never dealt with that oddity, date time parse or date time format into Unix, so it gives you a number. We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to do that. But now I'm getting distracted by my laundry list of complaints.
You know, one thing that I did notice, I wonder if this is worth showing. I'll pull in Playground. So in automations, let's see if there's a date field. Do I have a date field? Publish date. So this feature where you would put the specific time, this changed recently where it used to you could just put that right in. Oh my gosh. What changed? I
They
It
wonder
figured
might
maybe
I think I know where you're going. Sometimes it will be like, do you want the date or do you want
yeah,
it in like local or
right,
European or
right.
ISO? I think if you do like an email step and put it in the body of the email, that's where it is. So this
I
is a
wonder if it needs to be formatted as a time. I bet that you need the time on there.
possible. This is a good time to mention that it's pointed out in that community post as well. Some of these inputs, what you can output them as does change depending on what step or thing you're inserting it into. Like the insert as JSON, if it's not a script, it will insert the JSON as text that is formatted like JSON. But if you insert it into a run script action, it will be JSON as data. So you don't have to convert text to JSON in the script. It will come in already as either an array or an object. So useful feature, but it's also one of those things that's not really documented all that well. So it's hard for you to know like what um it's going to change depending on the context you're in. I feel like, Dan, this is if you do like a long text field that you're inserting the date into, or it being an email step or something, that's when it gives you those extra options.
Maybe if it's a text space. I thought for sure I was putting into a
Oh,
date field. No, even there. I wonder
where
if
is
it's enterprise only, maybe. Because
I've
I
seen
know.
it too, Dan. Now that
I
Yeah,
have two. I can attest to it, but I don't.
yeah. It may not be fully rolled out, so I saw it in a different environment. So
I think we're probably going to need a whole episode dedicated to like Airtable ghosts, where everybody picks one feature that you swear is a feature and you have to find it.
Love
yeah,
it.
that'd be funny. A scavenger hunt. We could have a
Yeah.
scavenger hunt of like, I know this is in there somewhere. Gotta find it. Very cool. Okay, so some new things to play with. We'll do a deep dive on this in the coming weeks and play with this because honestly, there's time I still haven't fully embraced the JSON, even though I know there's times where I'd want to use it, but most of the times it comes up is when I don't want to use it, and so I need to understand it better. So we'll do that. All right, Ali, let's learn some softer. If you want to share your screen.
Yes, let me do that. And I want to do this window. All right.
Okay. There we go. Let's get rid of this guy. There we go.
Awesome. Okay, so I figured today it's been a long time since we've covered anything related to Softer, and they've been through a whole new like relaunch of features. They're basically a brand new platform, very similar to what they were before, but they have a lot more capabilities, mainly in terms of like, I mean, really across the board. But like for me, my favorite things are what I'm going to go over today, kind of do a little bit of an unboxing, so to speak, and build a quick app together. They've introduced their own database, which I actually have not touched myself, and we're not going to go over that part today. I'm going to stay Airtable centric. However, I have heard very good things about their database platform. And they've introduced workflows as well as like forms that you can take outside of Softer and give to other people, external forms. Haven't played with that. Haven't really had a need to, but could be useful as well. But workflows, really, really cool. The AI stuff they've got going on, really, really cool. So I'm going to go through some of that today. I, as an example on the back end, have unearthed one of my favorite examples, which is students and classes base where I'm tracking enrollments of students in particular classes. And I've added a couple tables here to track grades and assignments. And I thought a good use case today would be, that's a helper field, as I was building this out. I thought a good use case would be to build a quick like teacher portal for them to, submit grades for students. If we had time, you could do the reverse of that. You could do a student portal, but good use case with little bits of data to play with to really showcase some of the new stuff going on in Softer. Softer also has a public roadmap, which is something I wish Airtable had.
I don't think it'll ever happen.
Right? It's like, what are you doing? We all want to know. But Softer tells you exactly what they're working on, which I really love to see, and what they've just released, what they're currently working on, and what's planned. I am particularly excited for page breadcrumbs in this planned list. That's going to be huge.
I'm genuinely surprised that that's not in there. That is web design 101.
Yeah.
Breadcrumbs.
I could imagine it. Maybe it'd be hard to implement with the structure of how it works, just because you only build one page for any number of records. Like, it's kind of like the same as a detail page, though. So those, like in Airtable, it's the same kind of concept. I don't know.
But I see
here they're clearly going directly at Airtable, with their database, and now they've got record history on the way, AI agents.
Yep.
Well, they've launched building apps with Snowflake data. And for those of you that don't know, Snowflake is for storing like millions of records. It's an enterprise grade software common for Airtable's lunch and several other people's lunches as well. Not just for a little tool to help you and your team. If you're using Snowflake data, you're probably a part of either a very large company or a company that deals with quite a bit of data.
Yeah. I really can't say enough positive things about Softer. Like even their entire team, they've got support. They're literally online 24/7. They get back to me at all hours of the day. Like they're just really, really great platform. They move quickly. Very impressed. So super excited about a lot of these things. One of the cool things they let you do, I'm just going to scroll through this quickly and just point out, be a little fangirl for a moment. You can turn your app into a PWA app, which I think it's like personal something.
Progressive web app.
Progressive
web app, thank you. Which makes it accessible on a phone. So you can actually let your users download it. I think you can even can't recall if it can go into the App Store or not. I haven't dealt with that part yet. It might be possible. I'm not sure though. Like with a private.
PWAs, I think are usually an alternative to going through the app stores, which require like someone to review and approve it usually. But most often people aren't going to know the difference between if it's a native WebOS app or whatever versus a PWA. They're very useful. Glide does the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this becomes really, really cool. You can push notifications to the app, which is really nice. This one, I like first, like they're literally on a roll this past month. Like this summer, they're shipping all the features that I've wanted since day one, which like this, you couldn't choose the colors of your chart. You could only drag them in order of like the right order. And then if you had only 2 options visible in the chart, now suddenly the colors are out of order. Like it was really a mess, but now you can actually assign them and make it look pretty, which I'm loving. Workflows, huge. We'll go over that and some examples of that. My personal favorite though is the vibe coding block. So that one really, really huge. And they just updated it to connect to multiple data sources. I had been feeling the pain of that. It was similarly to how Airtable first rolled out their custom interfaces. It could only connect, and custom elements could only connect to one table at a time. Now they can connect to multiple. Really cool. But softer, it can connect to not just your Airtable data, but you can combine that with other data as well. So like you can see here, they've got 2 different sources. So you can filter them separately and be like, okay, all of this data is what I'm working with. This stuff from over in that app and this stuff from over in this app, which gives you one unified surface, which is really, really nice. Then I'm just going to hop in and start building. We could keep going on that list, but let's just actually do it. Similar to Omni, they do let you do like, create an app via a prompt, but I'm going to skip that because I like to just do it from scratch. And again, I'm going to just say start blank and connect to Airtable. They have a ton of data sources.
Crazy.
Right?
SQL Server. My God.
They've got everything. I usually skip this part. You can like check off the tables and create these pages. But I really just like to start from scratch because in my head, if it's already created, I like forget which ones I've looked at already. And like, I just want to build it all myself. They have a little chat bot on the side, which we can use just kind of like almost exactly like Omni would work, where you can ask it to do things on the page, add things for you, questions about how you're setting it up, etc. You can preview this, desktop, tablet, mobile. And by default, it just throws in a bunch of random stuff on the homepage, which bothers me because I'm like, I said, start from scratch. I don't want this. Either way. The first thing I'm going to do is hook up my users. So I'm going to go to the users tab and say I want to sync with a data source. So this can be from any table. It doesn't need to be the same data source that I picked originally. I could really have it come from anywhere, but I am going to make it the same data source. And in this case, I'm going to say teachers. Now you can say here if you want to just use everybody or a selected subset of records, which I 99% of the time am doing the selected subset because I don't want just everybody to have access. One of the downsides of these apps, such as Softer, and they're not the only one, it's Airtable as well. It's most of these SaaS applications are user-based, and that user limit is getting lower and lower and more expensive. So you really want to save on your user count where you can. And you can do that by saying, okay, only select if, you could say status is active or whatever you might have. I'm not going to mess around with that right now just for the purpose of time, and I'm going to stick with all. But you can do this, and then there are advanced rules. So like Especially if you use selected, I highly recommend making sure that you review these. Basically, there's options where if you have open sign up on your site, which I wouldn't in this case because I don't want to just let teachers sign up to be a teacher. It should be closed. But if you did want open sign up, there are plenty of use cases where you would. Then you want to choose if you want that to be created in your actual users table. I don't know what the benefit of not having it created in your users table would be. To me, it feels like a scary land to be in where you don't create a matching record. So I would honestly recommend not doing that. Then this is very important though, is if they get deleted out of the app, like you actually physically right click on their record and delete it out of Softer or in Airtable. What should happen to the user in Softer? I usually say just deactivate synced user because that will just make it so that when they try to log in, they can't anymore. And it won't remove it from your Airtable base. But sometimes you might accidentally have it on the delete synced user one. So if they stop meeting the conditions, they get deleted. And you don't want that to happen. So I usually leave it on these two settings, but these are important things to look at depending on what your use case is. Then I'm going to just map this to my user fields. So email is how they log in. I'm going to pick first name for name, which is so painful to me every time I do it, but they don't let you choose a formula for, oh, you do. Well, they do, but it causes problems historically, unless they literally just changed it today.
Well, you couldn't do the two-way sync with the formula.
Right. You can't do exactly. That's exactly right. So same with like if you have, that goes for your email as well. I've used a formula for an email field and it got mad at me down the line. Like things stopped working. So just word of caution, make sure you choose editable fields, which if you have a formula for the full name, unfortunately, will not let you pick that. So bummer there, but you can have an avatar, which I don't have a space for here. So I'm going to leave that blank. And then you can map their created time and their last login time to fields that I have in the base here. So I've got these as placeholders ready to go to map to that section there. Then I'm going to say save and sync.
I don't see password. How does it handle passwords?
Great question. So once they are all loaded in there, so this, you can see here what the off method is, and that is something that I choose on this authentication page. You can go into here. There's certain enterprise level options as well as Google sign-in, which is really nice. They have the magic link option as well, but they will like make you, if I try and turn this on, they make me like type in, I understand the risk, which I kind of love because it is very risky to have magic links. But I do kind of love them.
I don't think I've seen permanent magic link before. Is this like a static URL that like, as long as you have it, you could log in?
Yes.
That's not what I'm familiar with. Normally, in my experience, when you click login, it'll ask for your email and it will send you an email, which is a new link every time. You click that and it will authenticate you, which is more secure than just here's a link that you could always, you could give it to your friends and neighbors and they can log in as you.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely agree. I know most people use, you can do, so what Camille's talking about is an option as well though. But it's a kind of similar, it's a code, it's not a link.
Yeah.
This is a huge step forward to me in terms of what they used to offer for login. And the onboarding scenarios can be really painful to set up sometimes depending on your use case. That's, to me, still feels like the biggest stumbling block when it comes to Softer, is I usually feel a little bit disappointed with how everything's set up. I'm like, maybe I could be doing it better, but I haven't found a right way to do it. For example, if you want the one-time code or a password, like I want them to be able to choose, right? So when they log in, they can set up a password. The first time they log in, they can actually choose what their password is. After they log in the first time, though, which is strange. Either way, if I want both of these as options, they will receive a one-time code every single time they try to log in. Even if they are logging in with their password, it's going to still send them the one-time code, which really bothers me.
Yeah.
No one else does that.
What or means. That would be and.
Yeah. Like it's silly to me, but it's still a huge step forward. And I think if you have open sign up, so when you actually like are letting the user sign up, if you have password as your only thing, then it will prompt them to choose a password when they are signing up. But if you don't have open sign up, then it's like, okay, you just have to kind of figure out what the lesser of two evils is, or mess around with all the options and figure out what's least painful.
And that password is only saved within Softer. It doesn't sync it to your.
Yeah, it's the users. So you don't have access to any users' passwords. It's all saved back end. Excuse me, sorry. And let's see. Email input, you can, just change what the label says on the login screen. Oh, here, either method or both methods, you can enforce 2FA, but there's not like a way to say, don't send the one-time code, which really bothers me. But there's still a huge step forward there. You can choose here whether you have the open sign up or not. And you can, if you don't have open sign up, or if you do, rather, you can choose if it's domain restricted, which is also nice. Onboarding flows are really cool. I find them useful, and they're relatively, I think actually they've existed for a long time. I've only just started getting into them. You can choose when somebody logs in, like what their first page is going to be. And you can have different user groups. So if I did have, one table of teachers and students, for an example in my database, I could split those into user groups of teachers, students, and then have different permissions set up for those different groups, and different pages that they land on the first time they log in, for example. So that gets pretty powerful with like actually setting up your onboarding flows, and makes it a nice user experience. Let's see, any other questions on this? Oh yeah, I should get into the data restrictions as well, and user groups. User groups I just talked about. By default, you have visitors, so anyone who's not logged in, and then logged in users. But then you can create groups within the logged in user group to be like, okay, if type equals this, put them in this group.
And a person can be in more than one user group if they meet more than one condition?
Yes, which great implementation. Yes, exactly. If that's not possible, I get so frustrated. It makes things really hard. But it is here, which is nice. Then we have data restrictions, which super, super cool. You can apply global restrictions to tables. So for example, in this database, what I might do, or I might not, depending on how I want this portal to function. Like if you're like, okay, when a teacher logs in, you could make a decision to say, can they see only the classes that they are the teacher of, or can they see everything? And then maybe you could have a tab that's like, my classes, all classes. Or you could decide to say, no, teachers can only see the classes that they are teaching, and they can only see the students that they are responsible for, so on and so forth. So you can set that up at a global level rather than every time you reference that table having to set that filter, which can be really frustrating. The other benefits of that, which I'm actually going to wait to set this up because I'm going to show you what the benefit is in a moment, are that it like changes that linked record drop down across the board. Every time the teachers go to search for a class, they will only see the classes that they should see, which is really nice. So I'm going to set that up in a moment. I'm going to wait until I have the right setup to show you the difference of with and without. But here on my homepage, I'm going to just delete everything here, start from scratch. They've just redesigned this as well, so I'm getting used to it, but they have application UI, which most of these are, I don't know why they've decided to put some in this bucket, but either way, form, grid, list, table, item details, these are all things that are going to connect automatically to your data source, like you map them that way. Same with chart, everything basically here. But then they have containers where you can put them on the screen in different places, tabs and columns. And then they have all these drag and drop kind of website builder tools, like elements, blocks, if you will. What is really cool about this is if I'm like, oh, I really like how this looks, but I want this to be connected to my data. Like, I'd rather have it look like that than like the grid. You can do that now with the vibe coding, which is really cool. You can actually chat with it and say, hey, hook this up to my assignments table or whatever it might be. And then you can map the fields accordingly. So I'm going to go over that afterwards, but really cool stuff happening here. So let's say I want to start off with when the teacher logs in, they should just see their classes here and be able to click on one of their classes. So first thing I'm going to do is map this to a source. And again, you can use multiple sources, so you can pick away to your heart's content. And if you have like sync bases as well, it's really nice because you could have like, if you synced tables, you know, like if you had your grades in one place and students in another, you can bring them together onto the same screen here in really easy ways. So I'm going to go classes, and then it automatically maps some of my stuff. It takes a stab at throwing in fields for me. And I can choose here what the sort is. I can choose the record filters. So this is very similar to an interface page, kind of like I can set up the back-end filters, and then under the content, I have the ability to set up these front-end filters for the user to play with. But in here is where ordinarily, if I weren't using the data restrictions like we discussed earlier, I could go here and say only show where the teacher record ID contains, sure, and then logged in user record ID. Now, as it says here, user-specific filters are not applied while we're in editing mode, so I'm not going to see any change here at first, but when I go to preview, now I can choose at the top here who I am, and Tomas has these classes, whereas Maya only has these, which is quite nice. But then if I don't want to deal with setting this every time I display the classes, then I would use those global filters or global restrictions under the users tab. The other thing that lets me do is if I have another page of, let's say, let's just do like all students. We'll do like a whole class list. And I'll throw in a table. Just sort by last name, first name. And then if I want to go to my content, you can choose what fields the search bar does, which is really, really helpful. Really like that. And you can also choose if you want a search bar at all, you can get rid of it entirely. Same with the in-app filters. I could shut these off, but I could also say I want to let the teacher filter by class. Oh, does this not work because of, oh, I'd need to do an enrollment. This is one thing that they haven't quite fixed yet, is like they haven't dove in, because this is a lookup field. It can't sync the class names because of the lookup. So that was me being silly. But if let's just actually switch this to enrollments instead. Because enrollments links directly to classes. And then it can use those values automatically. Let's just sort by student. So here under classes, I'm not going to do grades. But here now that sync with source is no longer grayed out, and I can say, yes, I want this to sync up. This is brand new, where I can actually now filter the options by conditions, which is incredibly helpful. Again, this would work if I did the data restriction at that level. I wouldn't need to do this part, but there are some use cases where you would want to be able to control that separately. So just really, really, really good stuff there. And what that means is I could say here, only show the teacher record ID contains logged in user record ID. And now I go preview that page. Because I'm logged in as Maya, I should only have those two classes here. So really cool. Love to see that. But if I get rid of this now, and let's go set up a data restriction. And we'll go to classes. Here, I'm going to pick, again, teacher record ID contains logged in user record ID. And I can choose which user group this applies to. So you can get really intricate with your permissioning globally, which is great. But I'm just going to say all logged in users. And you can choose here separately, if you have a high enough plan, different permissionings across creating, editing, deleting, etc. So now that I have that global permission, I had got rid of this filter here. It's not there anymore, but it should still only show me those two. Huh? Interesting. Did I not? You know what? I wonder if, yeah, let me just preview again. I have been noticing, I should preface this, I've been noticing some really random bugs in software also, but they're fixed quickly. But they have been happening as they've been releasing these new features. So, but again, support incredibly responsive. There we go. I think I just refreshed the page too early.
Yeah.
But
so that's the implementation there is pretty interesting, because I could see a world where you might have both teachers and like administrators or something logging into the same app. And if you do the data restriction and had a user group for teachers, it might be set, I can only see my classes that I'm a teacher of. But if you're an administrator, you could see any class in your school, for example.
exactly.
So that's pretty powerful at the like app level to make that security policy. It's the equivalent of like row-based access control, where you don't set it in the app necessarily, you set it like globally at the database level.
We'll do exactly. We could do something like that here, kind of do exactly what Camille was describing. Is like, let's say, and maybe I'd have a role field, but I'll just keep it simple for now. Like, this person, Maya, should be able to see everything, whereas everybody else should only be able to see their classes, user-specific classes. If I go into users, user groups, I'm going to create, let's call it super admin, condition-based, where permission level includes all classes. Really, maybe I should have said super admin instead, because then I could apply it to more than one table. But bad language on my part. Then I can add another one that's like just teachers. Now I'm curious, that's going to bother me if I say super admin or teacher. Ow, I think I might have broken it by doing that. I'm just going to verify. It's good to know when you're going to break something. So let's all find out together. We will go here. Interesting. Again, sometimes I think I just refresh too quickly.
It's gotta sync. The thing I worry about is, so now you're dependent on like values in a drop down, right? And then in Airtable, it doesn't tell you that that field is being used in Softer, and
Yeah.
the management of all of that is kind of scary.
Oh yeah. And the one thing I will say there is Softer does it on field names, not IDs. So if you change something,
Okay.
I noticed that instead of updating all classes to be super admin or whatever you changed it to, it didn't notice, and that suggests that it's not just field, it's also select options as well, that it's based on name and not ID, which is an interesting decision because those you can get the IDs from the API. So I wonder what their decision making there was.
right. Like what this one is interesting because you could actually put in different values. So it would, like, I just needed to add to it. But I think what they're thinking with it is that you could take a template, or like you could duplicate your app and point it at a different base. Like, say if you needed to restore a snapshot or duplicate your base or give it to somebody else, like as a template or something, those fields would then automatically map to the data source that you're now pointed at, without needing to go through and remap everything. But I would almost prefer to remap everything because I'd prefer to have the field IDs a thing.
Yeah. That might have been it. They also might not have wanted, like if you do it based on ID, then you also have to do an extra like query to in real time when you're on the page to get the current display name value. And maybe they didn't want to add that extra like load or whatever it is, or dependency for making it human readable.
Yeah.
But for longevity's sake, it'd be nice if it were ID. And there used to be a different third-party tool that would like connect the dots between, it would read your like make instance and it would read your Airtable instance and then find what fields, not just make, but other things as well, were used across other third parties. So it was like a dependency checker for your whole ecosystem. But I think they shut down, and I don't remember the name, but
was it the operators? The operator or was it Philip Lakin?
I don't remember because it's been a while, I think, since they were in operation, but somebody somewhere needs to make that again because at, there's
awesome.
there's a lot of obviously we're Airtable groupies over here, but there's a lot of other like SaaS applications that you could connect to Softer, as we've just seen, and then there's a lot of alternatives to Softer as well. And if you're using any one of these, it'd be nice if there was like a map that you could like pull of okay, I know Airtable's not going to tell me, but this other tool will. And I'm sure people are vibe coding their own dependency map thing if they can.
For sure. Like, I mean, the one thing that if I thought to keep up with it, Kavan talked about at Airtable once her trick to like documenting those dependencies that are outside of the Airtable system is she like creates a formula, and I'm probably going to butcher the beautiful way that she does it. But it's in essence, she like does a big OR function and puts in, you know, like first name, I don't know, classes, and then be like softer dependencies. And that's literally all she does, and just like keeps it hidden. So that way, if I'm looking at my dependencies for first name, I can see, oh, it's in softer, like something like that, which is creative.
Before script inputs, I used to have like a last modified time field and selectively target the fields I wanted. The weakness in that, I like it as a cleaner approach overall, but you can't select a formula or a computed field. So Kavan's approach, using a formula and then just having them somewhere in the body of the formula, makes it a dependency, allows you to pick any type of field for that dependency checker option.
Exactly. Yeah. Very nice. So now I've got this set up. I restricted that permission to just the user group teachers. So that means that Maya is no longer being affected by that permission, theoretically, and should now be able to see everything. Whereas if I preview as anybody else, I should only see their own classes. That's just their list, which is really nice. The last thing, I know we're running out of time. There's so much cool stuff to go over in Softer. But let's say I want to create a transcript for the student. Let's actually go, this is now enrollments is really what that is. And I'm not creating like, you know, a full app right now, but I want to just demonstrate the great back-end stuff as well. But let's go to create now students. We'll throw in a list or a table, doesn't really matter. And we'll just sort by first name. And again, we could continue with the permissioning here. I'm going to ignore it for now for the sake of time. But I could say, you know, only show the students that the teacher has in their class. There's all sorts of formatting as well on each of these fields. I don't want to skip over everything entirely, but you can set up different color coding for the tags, which I've found really useful. You can assign random tag colors as well as have it inherit the tag color from the base, the single select color. And they recently made it so that it does recognize the colors in lookups and the formula single select outputs, which it didn't always. And I found that to be really, really nice. But let's say when we click on a student, so if I go to actions, I'm going to get rid of our add record button because we don't want to be adding students here, but we can add a button here to open the details page of a student. And I don't have one yet, so it's going to prompt me to create a detail page. Now, and I can also choose if I want it, you know, to open in a modal or a new page, etc. That was on the previous screen. But now I'm working on a detail page, just like I'm working like you would be in Airtable. So a record detail page is kind of the same vibe as this. And I say vibe because this is a bit more flexible. You can throw in more data from other sources. But the one key thing to remember, and this is actually something I learned within the last year or two, is that the record detail source, like the current record that this is based off of, is always going to be the top leftmost source on this page. So if I had a different item details block above this and pointed it at a different table, that could mess up the rest of my filters on the rest of the page, which just keep in mind the topmost item details block is important. And then you can choose whether you can find the record based off of either the record ID in the page URL, which is inherited automatically based off of whatever record I'm clicking on in this case. So let's go to students here. I say open, like this record ID is what is going to be in the URL because I clicked on that record. Same thing as Airtable. But say I had, like, this is from what's really powerful about having that option to be able to change it to base it on conditions is, like, say I wanted that detail page to actually be sourced in a different base. And like when I click this record, that record ID isn't the same record ID as the synced base is. I can say, well, actually use that record ID, but point it, like, search based on that for a different field. Like, you can kind of redirect using that in powerful ways. It's hard to talk about arbitrarily without having the example ready. But I have found that to be a useful feature. So in here, I like to do a bunch of things here. I usually turn on the container just so I can see what's happening here. I don't want to be able to edit. We don't even care about this. I just want to see the name of the student. Above average means grades, above average grades. We could do, average grade letter, and I could say as defined in source. So that shows always it'll be color coded. I can get rid of the picture if I want. But now let's say I want to insert a vibe coded transcript. I'm just going to use that as a quick prompt here. I could, make my own based on different elements on the page, or I could just say, please create me a transcript for the student that is the current record on this page. Use data from the assignments, enrollments, assignments, and grades tables. And then I'm going to connect my data sources. So in here, I want it to have the students. I think it might already have it because that is the current record. But just in case, I'm going to still just say, I want them to have access to the student record where the record ID is the current record I'm looking at. I want it to be able to see the enrollments based off of the student record ID being this current record that I'm looking at. So that's that concept of current record here is the thing that's defined by that topmost item details block. And these are all the fields from my students table. And then I want to add another, which is I guess we could just do grades. We don't need assignment necessarily. And this will be student record ID contains, again, just that. Moments and grades tables, sure. Keeping it really vague for the sake of time. This does use AI credits, so software gives you a certain allotment of credits with your plan each month. I have found that it does dwindle pretty quickly. I have been using Claude a lot. I made a skill for software vibe coding, so I can just go to Claude instead and be like, hey, use this base, do this, and it gives me the code that I can just paste into this vibe coding block. So you can save on some software AI credits. But I have found their vibe coding tool to actually be very good. Like, I think it's better than Omni. And it can even dive into your Airtable data and it can decide what fields make the most sense to use for this to try out with, which is cool. There's, while we're waiting, along the same lines with AI, there's so much I didn't get to cover today that I wanted to.
Yeah.
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say they have a button now that you can use to ask AI something. Like you could let your user click a button and ask questions about the page and the data on the page and get answers around it. Like it's really cool. You can basically build your own little chatbot for your users. But yeah, so this is what it came up with. Not terrible to begin with. Let's verify that it's even correct if we go to preview. Okay, so Samuel Torres. Let's go look for their, we'll go with grades. Filter. Cool. So physics 1, fundamentals of chemistry, got a D+ and a B+. D+, B+. Yeah. That's awesome. Really not bad. Like first stab at it. I've been very impressed with it.
Yeah. This is cool. I'm imagining like somebody at Softer that like understands all the moving pieces. Like this is a complicated piece of software. Like every single data source has all these nuances. Like we know how much Airtable has. Every other one that they connect to has just as many. And to be able to manage all of those and get them to play nicely, it's just unbelievable that they pulled this off.
It's very impressive. And one thing I will say I've noticed is interesting using the vibe coding block. Seems like the way that they treat the data types in Airtable is different. Like numbers are not like numbers come into this vibe coding code as arrays for some reason. Every even if it's a formula that's a number. I was banging my head on the wall trying to figure out what was going on. I was like, why isn't this working? And then I realized like it was coming in as an array and I needed to just add the like, 0.
That doesn't really make sense to me. This looks like standard JavaScript. There's a type in JavaScript called number.
It's very weird. Yeah, like I wonder where they have data to do. Where are the grades? Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to map them. Yeah. But yeah. Thank you. Lots to go over
there. We could almost create a whole new series on Softer. I mean, it's as complex or more complex than Airtable to master.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So gave us just a taste. We might let us know in the comments and in the Built on Air community if you're using Softer and want to see more deep dives into us. Let us know, and we could do more content on it. So very good. Thank you, Ali, and we will be back next week. Hope everybody has a good week.
Yay.